I am running, for those of you who don't know, I am running for sheriff. And last time I was here, I did talk about a little bit of my platform as far as having effective and efficient operations at the sheriff's office, that we really need to have safe and secure communities. And then we have to work together to combat the drug epidemic. And I know we hear a lot about the opiate epidemic, but we really should be calling it the drug epidemic, because that hasn't gone away. For the last 50 years we've been fighting this, or 50 plus years we've been fighting the war on drugs, and we've been doing it the same way, expecting different results. And I don't think there's anybody in this room that either doesn't know somebody that's been affected by the drug epidemic, or maybe has a personal family story of somebody who's maybe died or suffered some issues because of the epidemic, or is in prison. And really need to start working together, not only with law enforcement, but with mental health providers, service providers, community providers, because we have to go at it as a holistic approach. I was asked the other day about the DWI problem and the drug epidemic. And if you go back into the 80s, there was over 50,000 people each year killed by drunk drivers. This past 2016, I think were the last results I was able to come up with, and there was under 10,000 people killed by drunk drivers. Now, still too many people. One is too many. But the way they have got a handle and a grip on this is through more of a holistic approach, meaning we're looking at prevention, we're looking at education, we're looking at enforcement, we're looking at the manufacture of cars and highways and making sure that they're safe. So that's the same approach we really need to approach the drug epidemic. We have to work together and share. Right now we have 2 drug task forces in Chautauqua County, which isn't effective, it's not efficient, and it's not safe. We have to get them back to being one drug task force, sharing of information and going back and forth with each other. I was happy that the Chautauqua County Chiefs of Police Association endorsed me. So there's 7 police agencies, police chiefs that are represented by that organization. And they recognize the need that we have to cooperate and collaborate. We may not always see things the same, but we have to work together. And when we share information, the chiefs, they meet monthly, they share ideas back and forth, they discover what the problems are and try to come up with effective ways to do that. The sheriff needs to be at that table and participate in that. But that's also a way that we can save some money. And people say, well, how will we do that? When we start meeting together, we can find out what are our needs, where do we have to spend money, if we are doing it in groups, we can hopefully save some money, realize some savings from that. But also, I am proposing that at least maybe I don't know what time frame, but on a regular basis, that not only the chiefs meet, but the chiefs invite like the battalion coordinators from the fire service. So we can all, the EMS will be there, so we have first responders. So we're all working together. We've seen, I don't know if you probably have seen in the paper, the opiate deaths have gone down this year, which is a great thing. But if you kept on reading, you'd find part of the reason the deaths have gone down is because the increased use of Narcan. So, which is great. It gives us an opportunity to, I hate to say this, to live another day, but now we can actually, at least gives us an opportunity to reach out to these individuals. But I fear that we're going to see this come back up, because as the potency of the different opiates continues to increase, Narcan's not going to be as effective. So, again, this is that cooperation that we need together. So, I could kind of go on, and I would be willing to do that. But if they have any questions, I'd be willing to answer those. And then I'll wind up. Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
You have to look at one of the reasons why people turn to drugs, and a lot of it is pain. And they want relief from pain. In extreme cases, they end up committing suicide. Okay, so you're not dealing with just a drug problem per se, you're also looking at a mental health issue and personal issues as to the individuals themselves, how they can deal with problems.
And we go around the state teaching a program called Crisis Intervention Team Training to law enforcement. And part of that is we discuss mainly for the officer's sake too, is because officers aren't immune to the stresses. I just posted something on my Facebook about the suicide rate in law enforcement. More officers take their own lives than are killed in the line of duty every year. And that's similar with firefighters. So we have to look at that. And our county executive started a program called, or is initiating a program called CARE, Countywide Alliance for Enforcement and Rehabilitation. And I've asked him, I says, can you find a way to put H on the end of that? And we have to have hope. Okay, our people need to have hope. And it's not just hope in eternity, but it's hope is, where am I going to find work? I've been using an example, and I have a video out that a friend of mine who spent 12 and a half years in prison. He was in prison because of, I believe, burglaries, but the burglaries were driven by his drugs. So, and he's very open about that. But he got out of prison. While he was in there for 12 and a half years, he really did things right. He took as many classes as he could. He tried to better himself, taking classes on how to, write his resume, how to do things. He ended up getting a master's degree through a private college that would provide the education. First week out of prison, 15 job applications. Guess how many calls he got? Zero. And he came and he sat across my desk and he says to me, Jim, he says, I have 15 applications. I've seen all of them. They were good. I mean, he did a good job on them. And I says, Stace, I can't begin to understand what you're going through. First of all, I'm not a black male. Second of all, I've never been in prison. Third, I have no felony convictions. And he just threw his head back and he says, you get it. Oh, wait, I just told you I didn't get it. But he says, you get it, that you don't, you're admitting that you don't understand it. And I said, well, why don't you come back? I was at the mission. I said, why don't you come back this afternoon? I'll interview you. And he came back in a nice suit. Didn't have the suit on when he left. Came back in with his resume. He got hired. He's been a great employee there, a great friend. But now that may not be typical, but I believe there are people in our jails, there's people in our prisons that if given a chance, in giving some mentoring, think about it, 95% of the people who are incarcerated come from a family with no loving father figure. 50% that are incarcerated come from a single parent home. And this is, and some people say, well, what's this got to do with the sheriff's office? I think we need to be promoting different things of mentoring. Walked through the Chautauqua County Fair this summer and saw the 4-H program. What a lovely program. Mentoring these young people along. And I got to think about it. I worked the fair for 30 years, and I don't think I ever had to chase one of the 4-H kids. Now, sometimes they were a little mischievous and they would put tires on top of people's cars, but they were people they knew, garbage cans and, just pranks that were harmless pranks. I'm not advocating that they do that, but we never saw them fighting. We never had issues. And it's like, because they had some great mentoring. And I'm sure that there were some single parent homes there and, the same thing, but they had somebody there to help them. So as, what I've been learning as I go around the county since March is there's a few topics that keep on coming up. The drug epidemic and the crime that goes along with it. What do we do with our youth? There's not a lot for the youth to do. And what are we doing with our seniors? Okay, and I got thinking, it's like, Cornell University has a great program that they started, and it puts together seniors and our youth. And it gives an opportunity where the youth can really work together with the seniors. And it brought me back to my childhood. My mom used to send me over to Mr. Griffith's house. And Mr. Griffith was a World War II vet. And he'd share stories, and I didn't quite understand, but when we left there one time, my brother says, please don't tell Mr. Griffith we're German. And I didn't know what that meant. But I do now, because I did, I later studied some history and understood that. And Mr. Griffith, was Battle of Normandy, he had his face bashed in. I probably learned a few swear words from Mr. Griffith also. But you know what? I believe that was time that was valuable to my brother and I, and it was time that was valuable to Mr. Griffith, that he could share with us, those stories. And my daughter was the same thing. Where I live, we have several what we call grace homes or senior citizen living homes, and we would not be able to find my daughter at times. And then we'd find her out back, and she'd be having, I think she went back there for the cookies. But you know what? to this day, she'll ask about the ladies out back, or the ladies will ask about her. They don't ask about my wife and I. How's Abby doing? How's, and so those, we need to foster more of those relationships. We need to foster more community policing, community efforts. And again, a lot of my dad was a master of getting me to do things, making me believe it was my idea when it was truly his idea. Does that make sense? Well, I even looked at my policing philosophy, and then I looked at something that was published about him back in the late 60s, early 70s. I thought, oh my gosh, he did it with that too. But we learn by getting it into our communities. My dad taught me early in my career, my dad was a police chief, taught me early in my career that I needed to get out of the car, stop and have coffee with people, because he yelled at me for not stopping to have coffee with them. But doesn't mean I have to go to my dad's house for coffee, but I can stop at those coffee shops. We learn a ton of information at the coffee shops. I stopped up Jenna's Cafe in Dunkirk yesterday, and only was there about a half hour, and boy, did I hear a lot of issues and concerns from the people that were there. And that's what we have to be willing to do. And we have to encourage our officers to do that. And then give them an avenue to report back. Because what is needed in Ripley, New York might be different than what's needed in Frewsburg, which is in Gary and Sinclairville, or wherever. So we have to be willing to get out into those communities. But back to the drug problem. How many of you have ever had a painkiller? I had Demerol when I had my wisdom teeth taken out, and it made me feel good. But what I had is a supportive family. So when I say that is I had a supportive family when I got out, that I didn't need to keep on using what made me feel good, that's the drug. But when you have somebody who has no hope, why not use drugs? And that's sometimes the mentality. So we have to be offering that hope. Through employment, through training, through mentoring, through faith, through many different things that we can offer that. They're trying to get, across the country, they're trying to get what they call ban the box. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that. No, ban the box is where job applications you have to check off that you're have a felony record. We've been working, it's called Offender Workforce Development for the last, I'm trying to think of what year we started this, but a group of us were trained in it, and it's to work with offenders, to teach them how to do good job, resumes, job searches. But what we try to teach people who are getting out of prison or jail is, if that question is there, to document it. Say, can I talk to you about it? And then we have what we call the incarceration speech. This is what I did. This is what I learned from it. And this is what I'm going to do to move forward, to advance my life, my career. And when people can think of it in that way, how we're going to move forward, then I believe that we can get past some of this. And it's like I say, my friend there, I can't imagine what it's like to be there. But I do truly believe the majority of the people that we've arrested, that are incarcerated, are not necessarily bad people, but they're people who have made bad choices. Some of them, many bad choices, and they keep on making them. But you know what? Now there are that percentage of people that just need to be incarcerated, that maybe are bad people. But many of them are not bad people. They make bad choices, and we have to be there with them. Yes, sir.
I see everybody talking about all the ways to making our youth more accountable for all the good things in life and how to handle themselves. But nobody talks about the most important thing, at least it was for me as a youth, and for my children as a youth, and it's one word: parenting. It is absent. Our schools, they have no jurisdiction of discipline. I remember when my son, who is now 56 years old, came home when he was 15. He says, "Dad, you cannot spank me anymore. Because if you do, I can call the police and have you arrested." So I took all three of my children to the phone. We wrote down the sheriff's phone number, the state police number, and the village of Westfield's number. And I says, "When I spank you, you come here and you call. But it'll be the last phone call you ever make." You know, they never made a phone call.
Well, you know,
And none of them been in jail.
so my first
Done anything wrong.
My first thought when you said that is your son's a lot braver than I was, because I would not have gone home and told my dad that. You know, it's
He was bigger than me.
but you know, I always look around the room because sometimes I'll say something, but the teachers that I respected the most and that I still remember were the ones that might have been what some of us would call mean back then. You know, but I'm looking around, I don't know what, Ron Van Ord was my 5th grade teacher, and I never saw him put anybody on the meat hook, but he always said he had a meat hook in his closet. And, you know, but what he did, I can remember in 5th grade getting in a little bit of trouble, and I left the school. Silly, my dad was the police chief, he found me, brought me back to the school, and we were walking the Dairy Queen that day, and I come back from the Dairy Queen walk, and Mr. Van Ord, I was sitting at the desk kind of moping and sulking, and Mr. Van Ord came in and sat on the desk next to me. And he just tapped the desk a few times, which got my attention. I figured for sure I was going to the meat hook. And he just said, sometimes people can get under our skin, and we just have to learn how to deal with it. I just remember that advice, and it's just, you know, but, you know, he didn't yell at me, but he sure enough let me know that he knew what I had done was wrong, and, you know, and the discipline came, he knew where the discipline was going to come. He didn't have to discipline me. You know, that happened when I got home. So, 2 minutes. So, all right, any more questions? Yes, sir.
How are police going to react if and when New York State legalizes marijuana?
So, I'd like to say that it's not going to happen. But I'm not optimistic that it's, yes, I don't know who said that, but I just believe it's gonna pass. I'm not in favor of legalization of cannabis or marijuana. We definitely are going to need to be prepared for, in my opinion, increased car crashes. We're going to have to, there's a lot of side effects that I don't believe have been truly studied. We don't know what the effects are going to be of the vaping in the cannabis. I don't think there's been enough studies. So one of the simplest things that we have to think of right now is how we're, like our canine dogs that are alert on cannabis. Now that's no longer going to be, so I've heard, I don't know if it's fact, but the state police have already started getting new dogs that aren't trained to alert on the cannabis because, you know, I don't know that that's factual, but I've heard that from a couple different sources. So, but we have to be prepared for that. We have a program called Drug Recognition Expert. That's something I've trained for years, and we're probably going to have more of those because there's no way to really test like a breathalyzer for cannabis. It's either blood test or urine test, and we don't. They're also not setting levels. So what's the level of intoxication for cannabis? So you know it's not there. So, but it's coming right now. We have it's been small dosages of marijuana, small quantities of marijuana has been decriminalized for years since I've been on the job. So if it's a violation if I have a small quantity, and we haven't seen that helping any either. So we have to crack down on the sales of it, sales, you know, the big sales. Sorry, Mel.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
You can let people know what you got right over there.
Okay, I do have some signs over here if you'd like any, and I have more out in the car, and I also have palm cards if you want them. This is a great turnout. One of the things, real quick, what I don't see here, and this isn't, yes, thank you. I was a little afraid to say this because I don't know what the average age is, but it's too old. We need our young people involved because what I've learned through this political process is so many people have no clue, and I was one of the people that had no clue of the process to get involved in politics. And the process is going, we have to start encouraging our youth to get involved. So start recruiting young people to come in.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, what a great
Thank you. All right. Thank you.